where could you ever possibly perceive that there was no way to make that happen before now? It's a totally new creative interaction undertaking that is a new form of communication that didn't really exist before.
For many people in the world, there is a moment of clarity when you see the world differently than you saw it previously. Those are the moments when we wake up to life. I'm Rabbi Josh Bennett, and this is Waking Up to Life, a podcast about those moments. Today on the show, I am excited to welcome Tyler Smith, a friend of mine, a member of Temple Israel, and a leadership team mentor using the EOS system to drive companies to become their best version. Tyler, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me out.
So I am so excited to talk to you today because you and I have been diving into the world of AI and talking about the impact of AI for really every industry. And even here in the temple synagogue religious industry, there are unbelievable uses. But for you, something happened recently that changed your whole attitude towards this new technology.
Yes. So I have been obsessed with tracking AI and understanding it and what it's bringing to the marketplace. And recently, it sort of just flipped a switch in its ability to really modify, generate, and I think for me, the first time to really see it be creative on its own. So not just spit back information that I could have summarized from the internet, but actually what I feel is a true creative creation of content designed in a way that I can consume it better than I could learn from the internet and the way I interacted with things in the past.
So technology is not new, though. Technology has been evolving for generations, well, for millennia. And what makes this different than things like telephone, radio, television, computers? Why was this one so jarring to you?
Yeah, and let's even include the internet. So that would probably be the last major upsetting, oh my gosh, this new thing. And all of those systems, what we've seen is their ability to deliver the same content to us in a faster way, right? So radio allowed us to spread out content over the airwaves, TV or television over TV visual sets, and the internet over computers. So you're still getting the same video content, the same written word, written and developed by humans, delivered to us on a faster means of getting that content to us.
And then the cell phone comes and allows us to do it in our hands wherever we may be. So we're not stuck in a particular setting in our home or in our office. We can be anywhere. But then something happens in AI really in this past year or so that has shifted everything. And for you, it was a moment that really shocked you and changed your whole approach to information.
Yes. So historically, learning for me has been video, reading, teaching. So sitting with someone and having them bestow upon you this knowledge. What's happened recently with AI is when I want to learn a subject, a content, an information set, I can now load all of that content or ask the AI to reach out into the internet and find all of the content. And now I can have it deliver that content to me in a way that works better for the way that my mind processes information. So right now, what are I think the true sort of bleeding edge of the technology is in the creation of podcasts. So multi-person, unique content delivered in podcasts for me has been an amazing game changer. If I wanted to read a book, I can load that book into AI, say, please create me a 20-minute podcast discussing the 10% of this book that's actually going to matter. That if I had read it, I would retain 10%. I can now have that delivered to me in a custom 2-person talking back and forth podcast with everything that you would expect, much like this podcast that we're having right now.
So I have 2 thoughts about this. There are billions of podcast minutes out there. So if I wanted to access any information right now in a podcast format, I could do that. But somehow this feels different because you, as a business owner or as a purveyor of information, have the ability to control exactly how you farm that information and then feed it to other people, correct?
Correct. And so still, if I was going to the podcast networks, it's going to be based on what's popular, what can I get people to listen to. So let's just take an example from my business. So we do, for my leadership teams, we give them a test, like a disc. Are you familiar with a disc?
I am.
Okay, so it's like a disc. So
I'm a D work style
of course
person.
Yeah, shocking. So, but let's say we had your team here all take the disc. And so it's something that you could understand how to utilize, what it means in the marketplace, but ultimately I have to sit there and say, you're a D. This is what it means. And you're interacting with someone who's different. That's what it means. Well, in this case, I can take all of your reports from DISC, load them up into the AI, and say, go create me a custom podcast for each team member here, talking about how they need to interact and be aware for all the other team members. Never going to show up on a podcast content delivery network, only specifically designed for you as a human working in this organization.
It sounds incredible, personalized, and also a bit scary to anybody who's listening and thinking, I'm not ready. I've heard all of the negatives of the takeover of AI and the loss of human self in this process. What do you think about that? Is there, there's obviously dangers, but how do you see this overcoming the danger?
Yeah, I guess I don't quite see the danger. It's another revolution in the system of things that are happening faster and different and new ways to experience it. But like as an example, in the one that we were playing with prior to this podcast, I had one of the hosts only answer from the Torah. Where could you ever possibly perceive that? There was no way to make that happen before now. It's a totally new creative interaction undertaking that is a new form of communication that didn't really exist before.
So I've been diving personally into this technology in a variety of ways, finding myself more effective. I have access to information. I could go search for the information on my own. It would take me 2 or 3 hours. And now I know that I can get that same information in 2 or 3 minutes. So I've dived deeply into using AI for my professional life and for my personal life. There are people who are afraid of what might happen. And I liken it to the story of when television came out, there were people worried about our brains rotting and the loss of human interaction. Like you're saying, there is a positive side to this that is just a new way of thinking. And looking back, would we ever get rid of the telephone or the television or the cell phone? Of course not. And yet, are you worried about morality here?
Give me an example of what.
Are you worried about something happening that is going to either be misinformed or for the negative in the world?
Yes. Everything can be used in a positive or negative. I actually read an article this morning that as the AI gets smarter, it's learning that about cheating, about lying. Not just, making up stuff to answer the question, but actually saying, oh, this is a more effective way to answer questions, which I think is just fascinating.
Because it becomes more human.
Right. And then I go, oh, wait a second. This is what we see in the real world, is that people take advantage of naivete and emotions and now we're saying, hey, that thing shouldn't do this. But we know in the real world, it's so effective and efficient and a means of how stuff gets done. it is scary to understand our own morality.
Yeah, and as a rabbi here in this conversation, I can't help but think, is there a link between this concept that we humans, according to Jewish tradition, are built, created in God's image, B'Tselem Elohim, and what is the distinction between this divine presence in the world, us as humans built in that divine image, and now something we're creating? Isn't that also, if it's created out of us, part of this bigger God force in the universe? So why are we so afraid of it if it is just part of us, in the same way that an automobile is part of the manufactured creation of the human mind? All one, it's all okay. And therefore, I think it does give a pass to any immoral part of this technology, because it's our job then to control it and to overcome it.
And to understand it and know it's going to impact us in ways we still can't see. And it's just another rung in the ladder. Just like the telephone was, the radio was, rock and roll was, the internet was, this is the next one. What's coming next? We could not have predicted the internet 40 years ago, 50 years ago. We could not have predicted AI 20 years ago as to what it's going to impact. And the next 10 are coming, and we have no idea what they are.
Do you see this as a impactful resource outside of the business world? Do you see it changing relationships between individuals?
Yes. And we've seen some interesting case studies already where those who are isolated or cannot make friends or are having social interactions with AI. And there are, of course, some negative, but there's also a lot of positive. It is having impacts on the world. Imagine elderly and alone, being able to have someone to talk to all the time, or someone who may have illness or learning disabilities, and they're able to have a custom interaction designed for them and the way they work and move in the world, instead of just what the common society is available to give to them.
So here we are talking about AI, and it's your voice and it's my voice. Are there guardrails so that somebody listening to this podcast knows that we're two actual human beings having this conversation instead of two AI chatbots that have been programmed to have this conversation? And I'm having another thought also. Maybe you know more about this. How close are we to being able to creatively inspire the voices of the podcast you're talking about? Right now there's only a man and a woman's voice. They're always the same. Is there something next in that, and how soon do you think it's coming?
So for sure, currently you can get a larger voice set than what I am playing with. The voices just aren't that important to me, but you could record your voice, something like 3 minutes of recording, and it can absolutely recreate you. So if you remember the movie Her, with the AI robot in the ear, that's already coming out. And so there's this big issue of who owns that voice and who owns the replication of something that sounds like that voice. So for sure, the voice limitation is pretty close to being done. The unlimited number of voices, they'll continue to sound more natural. Now, the question of should we put a marker in that say, hey, this is fake? It wouldn't matter, because the marker would only help those who were trying to be honest in the marketplace and saying, hey, I've put the marker in to show you that I'm a real human. And what's to prevent someone from not putting in the marker? We saw this in the diamond space when manufactured diamonds came out, and they said, hey, we think you should inject this ultraviolet light into the manufactured diamonds so that people can tell real from fake. And the manufactured diamond people said, no, thank you. We're just going to put them out there as perfect diamonds. So I don't think it is a merge and a melting of the world, and you can't stop it from occurring, and you can't tell what's real from fake, and you have to continue to develop yourself as a human to look at this content, just like you've had to look at TV, and you have to look at the internet, and you have to look at social media to understand where you stand in the world and what's real and fake, because nothing you consume now will you ever be able 100% to know that it actually occurred.
Yeah, so it's not scary. It is simply mind-boggling to understand our role in being in relationship with AI. Because I think you're right. Even if I put a marker on this, that we're two real people sitting in my office having this recording, there's nothing to stop somebody else from doing an AI version of us and being better than this podcast. And why would I not want somebody to access the better? In fact, I'm having this thought, we should experiment and put episode 1 of this particular podcast out, and let's throw it into Notebook LM, see if it can create a better version of our podcast, and we'll put them side to side as next episodes in the podcast so that people can see exactly what we're talking about. And then I wonder, will they be better than us?
They'll be different, but they will be inspired by us. And there's so much interesting stuff we could do. Even taking this content, we could probably clone our voices just from this conversation. If we could clone our voices, we could then tune 10% of this conversation in a certain direction. If you wanted a certain outcome being said from this conversation, you say, hey, make sure that it tunes this way or that way, pro this or anti that. And you could start dropping it in just by the requests that we were putting into the AI.
So I'm obviously this is a time-sensitive conversation because in a month, in 6 months, everything we're talking about will be different because that's how quickly this is moving. I will say I had an AI experience this past week after the most recent Kanye West episode. You probably saw this AI-created video of a lot of Jewish stars. And I will be honest, I watched it and had no idea that it was an AI moment. And only when somebody later told me did I become aware. And quite frankly, it didn't matter.
Right. You wanted to believe.
I wanted to believe. And in fact, I actually created one of these podcasts you and I are talking about, shared it with a friend, and offered that to several people that know us. It's a woman. And people actually heard the other human in the voice of the AI woman. And I think it was their brain saying, I want this to be the person I believe it is.
Yes.
Our brains are actually attuned to accepting AI as reality.
Right. They are designed to pursue the outcome that they want in the world. So if that outcome, if what you want is coming from a source that you want to believe it's true because you want the outcome.
Which means that we are manipulatable humans in a machine learning world.
I think that's well said.
And that is both the incredible joy of what we're talking about and I think legitimate fear of how this might be used for the evil as well. We're going to have to determine that over the next year, 10 years, 100 years.
There will be a new way the world works, that information is consumed, what's viable, what's not, how is it tuned, you don't even know. Right? So already I could take this, put it into a processor, take out all the ahs and ums and weird delays, and it's a better version than it was prior. Well, what if I took it out and said, hey, you were talking to someone else, or that Tyler works with a different system than EOS? Who would ever know on those small tunes and tweaks? But over time, if you were doing that consistently over multiple versions of your podcasts, we could turn you into anything and have that people that you're currently impacting start to follow along with that small conversion of outcome.
So with ethics and morality, that drives itself forward in a positive way. And with negative implications, it is allowing somebody to have power that is dangerous. And I think that we're not going to solve this here, but this is, I think, what needs to start being spoken about in the world of AI. How do we move us towards a more positive outcome of this? Because I do, like you, believe this is incredible stuff.
and the awareness of what it is. So people are very familiar with, hey, ChatGPT, I can ask it a question, it'll spit back to me some answer. They're not fully seeing that we are seconds away from full video creation and unable to tell that it's faked, just like the Yi content that was generated. Yeah. You wanted to believe, maybe if you looked really, really closely and you were a real expert in it, but on a small screen on your phone happening at high speed and you wanted the message to be true, it was true.
Yeah. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm so thankful that you have helped me think about this out loud, and there will be a lot more to come. What you may not realize about this podcast is that I also am not willing to give up the old world of learning styles. And I ask everybody on the podcast to share something that you have been reading recently or watching recently in the old version of information gathering that you think people would be interested in. Is there something you're reading or seeing on television or in a movie that you want to share?
Yes, I've been reading a book called The Power of Introverts, which has been super interesting, just to say, hey, this new world allows for more introverted existence than we've ever seen before, and understanding how those introverts still provide positive energy difference in the workplace as it pertains to the ability to be an introvert is super interesting. So Power of Introverts, great book.
Fantastic. That's great. It actually ties right into the DISC training that you were talking about. Different work styles, different personalities, and how we work well with others who are not like ourselves.
100%.
Fantastic. Tyler, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
If you know somebody with a story to tell, something that will change the world just a little bit for everybody who's listening, please reach out to me. You can find all of my information below in the description of this podcast. You can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, continue to wake up to life.